In the next 90 seconds, your brain should be gone forever. Not unconscious, not damaged. Gone. That is the rule you have been taught your entire life. When the pulse flatlines, the person is over. Subscribe for extreme body science. When your heart stops, oxygen stops. When oxygen stops, neurons panic. Electrical signals fail. Cells swell. Membranes rupture. Within 10 seconds, you lose consciousness. Within 4 to 6 minutes at normal body temperature, irreversible damage usually begins. Doctors build entire emergency protocols around that window. But here is the part no one tells you. There are people who broke this rule. People whose brains were clinically dead for nearly an hour and came back. No coma, no brain damage, no loss of memory. So the question is not whether the brain dies without oxygen. The question is why it sometimes does not. The exception, the back door. Science found your brain does not fail all at once. It fails in stages. The moment blood flow stops, neurons slam into emergency mode. They burn through stored adenosine triphosphate, your brain's energy currency, at a terrifying speed. Ion pumps along the cell membrane start to fail. Sodium and calcium rush into the cell. Water follows. The cell begins to swell like a balloon on the edge of bursting. Normally, this is a death sentence. The longer blood flow is cut off, the more the so-called ischemic cascade runs wild. Glutamate floods the synapses, calcium overloads the cell, free radicals rip through membranes, and mitochondria, the tiny power plants in every neuron, start a self-destruct program. But temperature changes everything. Drop the brain's temperature, and metabolism collapses. Chemical reactions slow. Ion pumps stop leaking so fast. Neurons quiet down. At low enough temperatures, the brain does not die. It waits. This is hypothermia, the biological pause button. For every 1 degree Celsius drop in brain temperature, the brain's need for oxygen falls by roughly 6 to 7%. At 28 degrees Celsius, the brain uses less than half the oxygen it normally needs. At 20 degrees Celsius, cellular activity is barely above idle. Electrical activity disappears, but the cells themselves are still structurally intact. From the outside, it looks like death. Inside, it is a fragile, temporary truce between damage and survival, a truce that buys time. The case that shocked medicine. Now put this into a real body. It is winter. You slip near a river and crash through a sheet of ice. Icy water closes around your chest like a fist. Your gasp drags that water into your clothes. Within minutes, your muscles are too cold to fight. You slide under. By the time rescuers reach you, you have no pulse, no breathing, no measurable brain activity. Your skin is waxy and pale. To every instinct in the room, you are gone. In one famous case, a woman trapped under ice had her body temperature fall below 14 degrees Celsius. She had no heartbeat for well over an hour. On paper, she crossed every line that textbooks call incompatible with life. Minutes pass, then 20, then 40. In a normal cardiac arrest, by this time crews have already stopped. They fill out a time of death. Families make phone calls. The story is over. But in deep hypothermia, the rules change. At 60 minutes, a team of doctors make a decision most would never attempt. They do not pronounce her dead. They treat her as a brain they might still be able to save. They connect her to a heart-lung bypass machine. Warm, oxygenated blood begins to circulate outside her body, then flows slowly back in. Her temperature rises degree by degree. 18 degrees Celsius, 20 degrees Celsius, 24 degrees Celsius. For hours, the monitor shows nothing but a flat red line. Then a blip. Then another. Her heart catches a rhythm. She is still deeply unconscious. But this time, there is no time of death written on the chart. Days later, she opens her eyes. She recognizes faces. She speaks. She remembers the mountain, the ice, the moment she went under. Her brain was without effective circulation for nearly an hour, yet she returned with normal function. The reason she survived was not luck. It was physics, chemistry, and cold. What cold really does to your brain. To understand why, zoom back down to the level of a single neuron. Cold slows everything that normally destroys that cell. Glutamate release slows. Calcium does not flood cells as quickly. Free radicals form too slowly to shred membranes. Mitochondria downshift instead of exploding. In normal cardiac arrest, neurons burn themselves alive in a storm of uncontrolled chemistry. In hypothermia, they go dark, but stay intact. Think of a city in a blackout. The lights are off, the streets are empty, but the buildings are still standing, waiting for power. This is why emergency doctors have a brutal saying, "You are not dead until you are warm and dead." As long as the brain is profoundly cold, there is still a small chance that switching the power back on will work. Modern medicine learns to control death. Once doctors realized cold could protect the brain, they stopped waiting for accidents to do it for them. Today, in intensive care units and operating rooms around the world, teams deliberately cool patients whose brains are at high risk. After cardiac arrest, after neonatal asphyxia at birth, after certain complex heart and aortic surgeries where blood flow to the brain must be stopped. This strategy is called targeted temperature management. Instead of letting the body sit at 37 degrees Celsius and burn itself out, doctors lower core temperature to somewhere between 32 and 36 degrees Celsius. Machines circulate chilled fluid through pads on the skin or cold saline into large veins. Sedation and medication stop the body from shivering itself warm again. For 24 hours or more, the brain is kept in this chilled, low-demand state. Then, just as slowly, the patient is rewarmed. When this protocol is used correctly, more patients wake up able to talk, think, and eventually go home, instead of remaining in a permanent coma. But this is not magic. It is precision timing wrapped around very narrow biology. Too cold, and the blood stops clotting. The heart becomes irritable and can slip into dangerous rhythms. Immune defenses slow, and infections gain ground. Rewarm too fast, and all the chemistry that was paused comes roaring back at once. Swollen cells burst, inflammation surges. The very brain you were trying to protect can be pushed over the edge. So doctors walk a tightrope. Cool enough, long enough, but not too much. They monitor temperature, electrolytes, blood pressure, and brain activity like pilots flying through a storm. The dark truth. Where the miracle fails with stories like the frozen under ice survivor, it is tempting to believe hypothermia has unlocked a loophole in death. It has not. Hypothermia only works under exact conditions. The brain must cool before oxygen completely runs out. The damage must be chemical, not mechanical. No amount of cold will repair a brain that has been crushed, torn, or massively bled. Time without circulation still matters, even in the cold. Most people do not collapse into glacial water or surgical teams. They collapse on warm floors, on city sidewalks, in parked cars. Their body temperature stays near 37 degrees Celsius. The ischemic cascade runs at full speed. By the time help arrives, the window has already slammed shut. In those everyday arrests, the old rule still rules. 4 minutes, 6 minutes, maybe 10 at the outside. Then silence that never reverses. The miracle cases make headlines precisely because they are rare, balanced on a razor-thin combination of cold, timing, and expert care. What this really tells us about the brain. So what does this actually say about the organ inside your skull? Your brain is not fragile glass. It is a chemical engine, dense, hungry, and surprisingly tough. Engines do not explode the instant they lose fuel. They fail when heat, pressure, and chemistry cross a point of no return. Cold pulls you back from that line. It slows reactions. It stretches the timeline where rescue is still possible. It lets surgeons stop circulation on purpose for half an hour or more during delicate operations, confident the brain can survive the pause. But it only moves the line. It does not erase it. For decades, death was defined by a clock. Stop the heart, count a few minutes, call the time. Now we know it is defined by control. Control of temperature, control of chemistry, control of time. The brain does not surrender easily. Under the right conditions, it can come back from what looks like an hour of clinical death. But when those conditions are missing, when the body is warm, the chemistry runs wild, and help is late, there is no second miracle waiting.